Blessings in the name of the Lord Jesus. Welcome to Paraclet TV, making disciples through the power of the Holy Spirit. There are important terminologies that you have to remember when we speak about review of literature. So we have here systematic. So there is a system to follow because research is not an art. It is a science. So when we say science, there is a body of knowledge that is into it. And there is also a body of knowledge how you're going to do the review of literature. And this body of knowledge includes three important processes. The first one, identify. The second one, location or locating. And the third is analyzing. So there is a need of, with the bulk or with the numerous available articles or available literatures that you will find largely in the internet, which of them should be identified so that you will be using this in your literature. And not only, and before, of course, identifying it, you will first locate it as there are available applications in the net. There are also softwares that you can use where you can locate the so-called literatures. And after you have identified, after you have located the literature, say it is a book, or say it is just a written literature or a journal, which within the journal, which within the book is to be considered or to be included in the review of literature. And there is a need of analyzing the said document, the said article, or the said composition. And when we speak about analysis, it is defined as breaking the whole into parts. So meaning, as you go through the book, you will find the different units, you will find the different chapters. And as you go to the different chapters, you will also must understand the different elements of the chapter. Say, for example, there is a paragraph that you have considered to be included in your review of literature. That paragraph is composed of sentences as well as of words. So when we say analysis, you have to break them into parts. So that paragraph must be broken into how many sentences are there. And before you will comprehend the paragraph, you must understand every word as well as every sentence or every phrase and every sentence within the paragraph. And that is called analysis. So these are the three important processes that you have to be involving yourselves in the review of literature: identification, location, and analysis. And in doing the three important processes, you must observe what system are you going to use. And the system I will be discussing to you as we go on. Next, it is also used to describe the written component of a research plan or report that discusses the reviewed documents. Please be reminded that the review of literature is not a sole part of the entire research or academic paper. It is there so that it will be included in all the elements of the academic paper or the thesis or dissertation. So that serves as the soul, S-O-U-L, of the entire paper. So the written component of the research plan, if you, whatever plan do you have, from the start of identifying the problem, going to the introduction, and up to the last part in its distribution, so that your paper will be giving advantages and will be beneficial to many community. What is the importance of review of literature? First, it will establish a good theoretical framework. And when I say framework, it is something like a skeleton. You must remember that a thesis must have a very tough, a very strong framework. And when I say strong framework in research, the full research is fully understood by the researcher. And if the researcher has a full knowledge of the entire paper, it will be easier for the readers, for the colleagues, when they come across with your paper or with your thesis, they will also understand that easily because you as a researcher understood it. So the level of understanding of your paper is considered as the skeleton. And that skeleton specifically is located in the review of literature. The amount or the level of knowledge that you have regarding your topic, regarding the different variables or the themes in qualitative research that you are studying is dependent upon the kind of skeleton of your paper. The more literature, the more you have understood it, the higher the level of understanding, the stronger is the framework. And when I say theoretical, this pertains to all the texts, including the specific theory or the different facts and principles that other experts have shared regarding your paper. We call that as theories, not only pertaining to a specific theory. So for you to have a very good theoretical framework, you must also have a very rich and good review of literature. It also determines what has already been done that relates to the topic. So the review of literature, meaning you are looking into the already written documents that are related to your topic. It attends to what needs to be done. So when I say it needs to be done, there are recommendations in most of the papers in thesis and dissertation. And what the recommendation has a rich of things that you have to do, and you have to really satisfy it. And you can find that in the literature. And when you review the literature, it will also be important in establishing the strategies and the data collection approaches that you're going to use. Say, for example, you have found a thesis and you are planning to use a checklist, but you find in one thesis that it's better to use a survey questionnaire, so you can change your first thought specific data collection approach. And that's how one importance of the review of literature. Another one, it facilitates a discussion of the meaning of the results of the study. You must remember that if you are using the MLA format or the Modern Language Association format, chapter 2, as well as chapter 2, which is called the review of literature, and chapter 4, which is the presentation, analysis, and interpretation of data, are coupled. They are married, meaning you cannot explain properly, you cannot discuss the meaning of the result of your study unless you go back to your chapter 2. Now, if you are using the APA format or the American Psychological Association format, your introduction, which is composed also of the theoretical framework, should also be married to the elements or to the division of the paper, which is called discussion. So discussion in the APA must marry with the introduction, while in the MLA format, your chapter 2 must marry with your chapter 4. General guidelines in the review of literature. Avoid the temptation to include everything that you find. Everything. There are numerous and available, and we have to thank God. We have to give him the glory for providing us the cyberspace, the internet. And because of the internet, it is now easier to look into related literature, because the internet will give you not millions, but billions of literature, and most of them might be related to your study. And because of the numerous available literatures, you might be tempted to include them. Please remember, I remember one of my professors in the Philippine Normal University, and many neophyte in research, they are tempted to make the part of the thesis, which is entitled Review of Literature, as thick as it must be. Must be the chapter 4, the analysis and the interpretation of the giving the meaning of the result must be the thickest part of the thesis. So there must have only an adequate components or collection of literature. When I say adequate, it depends upon you. If after you have read 3 literatures and you say, I understand everything about my topic, about my variables, then you stop. But if not, it is not adequate, you can continue to collect as many as 20 or as many as 30 literatures. And after you have consulted 30 literatures, then you are telling yourself, now I am fully strong and my framework is already tough. Then you stop after reading 30. So it is dependent upon the researcher or the researchers who are doing a certain study, as they will say that it is already adequate. Bigger does not mean better. So there are few literatures that are better than 100 literatures. Review only those works that are directly related to your specific problem. When I say related literature, it is related when they discuss about your topic. When the literature discusses about your own topic, it is related. When one of your variables is being discussed in a certain literature, whether it is published or unpublished, then it is related. So where can you find your topic? Where can you find your variables? They are largely available in your title. So the title will give you what is your topic and what are the variables included in your study. So you look at your title. You also look at your statement of the problem, because the statement of the problem will detail the different variables as well as the sub-variables of your study. And if you are not still satisfied with your title and statement of the problem, you go to the drawing, the heart of the entire paper, which is called paradigm of the study. This is one page of the entire paper wherein there are drawings and only few texts. The texts that are available in the paradigm of the study are the following: your topic, and the major variables and the sub-variables. So those are your clues when you go to the different literatures. If one of them, if the title or the topic, if one of your major variables and one of your sub-variables are present in the literature, it means that literature is related. Now, there is a difference, a slight difference between the literature review and the two general designs of research. So on the first column presents the qualitative design, and the second column presents the quantitative design. Now, in a qualitative design, the literature review is only limited, meaning you just consult few or just enough. It may not be exhaustive as compared to the quantitative design. Because why it is not exhausted? Because you are having a clue that you are using only your theme or your topic. Because the variables and sub-variables under qualitative design are not yet identified when you start your research, while in a quantitative design, your major variables and your sub-variables are already enumerated in doing that. So comparing the two, when you look into the literature review, a qualitative design may not be exhaustive. You just concentrate on your topic, on your problem. Then in a qualitative design, you can explore many concepts because you are not yet decided which of the many concepts will be identified as your theme or as your answer in your proposed qualitative thesis. Then, because the qualitative design also gives literature for building phenomena. So you look for literatures that are discussing about your phenomenon. If you have one phenomenon, then just read literature about that. Now, in a quantitative design, it is very extensive because of the presence of one topic and many variables. It may significantly influence your particular study because every indicator that you will find in the literature are significant to clarify your variables and sub-variables. Now, most of the in quantitative design, it is suggested by the University of Kansas that your literature must exhibit precise measurements, testing hypotheses, and mathematical formulae. So in a quantitative research, most of the results in the summary of findings that presents numbers, that presents formula, that presents about the results of testing hypothesis must be the focus of the review of literature. I have gone through the Google, and many of the experts are telling us that they believe there is no difference. There is no difference besides that what I have presented, and there's no difference in collecting the review of literature, whether it is qualitative or quantitative. So here is a an object or a figure that you will find regarding the different literatures, and you will see the quality of evidence that you're going to get from them. So the first, the base. From the base, we call this as unfiltered information. Going up, background information of the expert opinion, meaning only one is telling the facts or the information. Then case-controlled studies or case series reports, meaning the reports are, say, for example, there are 3 reports, series studies regarding a certain problem, or a cohort studies, meaning there are 2 partners or there are 3 of them that are partnering in a certain study or research. And randomized controlled trials, they are called unfiltered information, meaning their quality is not as good as the filtered information. The filtered information are the first half high. We have the critically appraised individual articles, the article synopsis, and these are found in journals, scientific journals, whether it is available in person latitude, or if it is Scopus, or if that is the ISI or the scientific index. And then critically appraised topics wherein there are evidences or the synthesis of it, and then the systematic review. And when I say systematic review, that includes the peer review or the blind peer review. There are groups of evaluators of the paper. So one example, basic example, is when you go to your masteral thesis, there is a group of evaluators. So there is a systematic review being conducted by the professors. And when you present your dissertation in the doctoral degree, there is also a group of experts, mostly are doctors or are authors of book, and they will do the systematic review. These are called filter information. So when you come across with numerous, literatures, you first classify them if they are unfiltered or if they are filtered. And you choose the filtered information because they are having higher quality of evidence. Now, look at this paradigm, the credibility of the sources hierarchy. And from the least credible to the most credible. So the unreviewed, the not reviewed, example, the blog post or the Wikipedia, they must not be used as review of literature. Now, the reviewed, editorially reviewed, as well as reviewed by the editor, more for grammar than content. Example, popular magazines, they are less credible as compared to the peer-reviewed and the reviewed by experts in the field. Examples, academic journals. So it's good to look at literatures when there are groups of writers and when there is also the process of peer review. Now, the peer reviewed are only found in scientific journals. So there are many available journals in the internet, even though some of them are requiring you to subscribe, but they are better than many unreviewed and many editorially reviewed papers. Okay. Now, in writing, you have to remember in the review of literature, you have to be reminded of the sin or the guilt of plagiarism. On your right of your screen, you will see the different keywords and phrases that will define what plagiarism is. So copying ideas, giving many or sentence production, borrowing, something like that. So let us see. What is plagiarism? So claiming authorship of a work or creation done by another person. You are not the author, but you are saying, I did write this. I am the one who did this. So that is plagiarism. Copying. This is very numerous or very obvious, one-tailed in statistics that many students are just copying. So copying an entire or just a portion of the work of others without acknowledging them is also plagiarism. Failing to put quotation marks, and when you fail putting quotation marks and you also did not recognize the author, then you are also committing plagiarism. Giving incorrect information about the source. Even if you put the source, but you are wrong in spelling, you are wrong in the year. Instead of putting 2001, you have put 2010. That is also plagiarized. So you have to be very careful, be analytical in writing the information in the reference section or even in the in-text citation. Next, changing the words but retaining the sentence structure. There are acceptable number of words that you can reuse, but it is better that you don't copy that, but you state that in your own words. Using so many words and ideas from the original source that makes a large portion of your work, even if you acknowledge the original author. This is also very tempting because if you are not an expert in research, you are tend to copy most of the work of others. Even if you put their names in the in-text citation, but when looking at your paper, it is composed of the work of others, so that is also plagiarized. How to avoid plagiarism? First, you have to do citation. So you have to consult the Google. There are available citation processes by the APA, by the MLA, and by the Chicago Styles of Writing or the Toberian. You just read that so that you will be good in writing. You can avoid plagiarism by putting quotation marks. And of course, by having a proper referencing. So also, you look at the Google, you will find the APA format or the book of APA in the 7th edition. They discuss how to quote, they discuss how to do referencing, as well as the MLA and the Chicago styles of writing. And the most important one to avoid plagiarism is to do paraphrasing. This is also a paradigm that will tell you when to do citation or in-text citation. In-text citation in the journal writing of APA, I will also give you an example. When you should cite? When it is a quote, do you have to cite? Yes, you have to cite a quote, cite it, and place double quotation marks around the text. When it is a paraphrase, meaning you have written it into your own words. Even if you have already written it in your own words, you still to cite it. Is it another idea or theory? Then you have to cite it. So you cite when it is a quote, when it is a paraphrase, and when it is an idea or theory of others. When not to cite? There is no need to cite if it is a common knowledge or your own thoughts. Although I, as an expert in research, I am discouraging my students, the non-experts, in giving their own opinions and giving their own ideas, because a research is a scientific paper, and many people will just listen or read your paper if the things that you are writing are objectively done by experts. So you always cite, you always include in your paper not your own opinion, not your own thoughts, but the thoughts of experts. Okay, so this is one formula that you have to remember. If the author's name is in your text, you do not need to repeat it in the in-text citation. So this is now the format. So the signal praise, the author, the year, then your quote, and then the page number. So we have an example. The signal praise is one researcher, Carol Gilligan, 2005, concluded that women impose a distinctive construction on moral problems. So the quote, women impose a distinctive construction on moral problem. So that's one example of scientific citation. So the citation is Carol Gilligan, 2005. Then when you do narrative in your paper on the literature, you have the Tyrone, Strauss, and Gott, 2016. This is the in-text citation. Encourage the use of simplified terms when it comes to discussing and defining the universe. For example, so this is already a narrative paraphrase, but still there is an in-text citation. Now, when you have a parenthesis, converting this to a parenthesis, so the difference is the author, Tyson, Strauss, and Gott, and the year as well as in the page are just in the parenthesis. Okay, continue. You may quote a word, a phrase, sentence, or entire passage. And there are two main rules for quoting in the APA format. If the quote is under 40 words, place it in a double quotation marks. So you count the number of words. It is lower than 40. You just put double quotation marks. But if it is more than 40, format it as a block quote in the single space. So I know that all of you are familiar with encoding. So you know single space, you know the block quote. So besides the literature, there are also the so-called intellectual property. So the trademarks, the patent, the copyright, industrial design, layout design, the trade secrets are intellectual property. When you use them in your paper, you must do a very good and scientific way of citation. And the intellectual property, we have our law in the Philippines. We call this as Intellectual Property Code of the Philippines, Republic Act number 8293. So you again Google, take time to read so that you will avoid plagiarism by observing the law intellectual property code. This is an example of a matrix wherein this will facilitate the review of literature. Now, on the first row, you will find the different authors of the literature or the books that you have consulted. These are just examples. I have Rico 2011, Santos 2007, Bendicho, so on and so forth. There are 11, at least 11 of them in the first column that I've consulted for my study. On the first column, I have my topic as well as my major variables. So these are the variables: principles of good assessment, then characteristics of the test, general description of validity, and so on and so forth. These are the topic or the major variables being studied. Okay. Now, because in this matrix, you have the different authors. So to see it properly in the screen, no, I have put at least 4 authors in one column. So 3 authors in the fourth column. So I have how many authors in the fifth column? Santos 2007, Miller, so Padua, Santos, there are 4 of them in that column. So in order to distinguish which is Santos, which is Miller, so I have given them colors. Okay, so Santos 2007 in the fifth column is all the black indicators are from Santos. All the red indicators are from Miller, and all the green are from Padua, Roberto, et al. The same with this column, the fourth. Black is from Navarro, Calderon, and Abubakar to facilitate the matrix so that you will understand how you will do this. So let us take, for example, one variable, and the said variable is called characteristics of the test. Okay, so on the second column, I have only one author. So meaning the characteristics of the test according to the black. Who is this black? Validity, reliability, fairness, practicality, and efficiency. That's according to Santos 2007. So according to Santos 2007, the characteristics of the test are validity, reliability, fairness, practicality, and efficiency. Validity, reliability are called sub-variables. The sub-variables of the major variables characteristic of the test. Now, in the next column, the red one, and because that's red, that's according to Calderon in 1993. So the characteristics of the test according to Calderon are validity, reliability, adequacy, objectivity, testing conditions, so on and so forth. So marami siya. And the same with this one. Okay. So this you will see a tool for you to at once see the different indicators per variable. And in the last row, you will find the complete referencing using the APA format. Yan. So this is the last row, the complete reference that includes the author, Rico Alberto, the year, when that was published, and then the title of the book, and then the place of publication, Philippines, and then we have the publishing house, to Anvil Publishing House, and in the same manner in other parts. So let us look at one example, having it in one. So I have here the content validity as the topic. So we call this as indicators or sub-variables. indicators or subvariables. The indicators or subvariables are the important concepts you will find when you come across with the literature that are related in your study. Everything, every important concept, important ideas that you will find in the literature are called indicators. And the indicators that are most important are called subvariables because the variables are here. So in a umbrella, we have the topmost, which is called the topic. The topic is composed of different major variables, and the major variables are divided into subvariables. For you to understand your topic, you must have major variables. And for you to understand one major variables, it must be defined by its subvariables. And its subvariables, for you to understand fully, you must have an indicator for the subvariables. The major variables, the subvariables, and the indicators are the instruments or the things that will make your framework tough or tougher. So you have to understand that. So I will go back here with the matrix as I go on so that you will find how useful is this in your paraphrasing. Let us look at the elements of the review of literature. You have the review of related literature that includes the review of related studies, your conceptual framework, the paradigm of the study. So the review of related literature, the related literature is also called conceptual literature or theoretical literature. They are similar in its aspect because there are universities that are using related literature. There are some that using conceptual literature. There are some that are using theoretical literature. And also the review of related studies, we call them as when we speak about studies that pertains to academic papers like thesis, dissertation, or other types of studies. Then you have your conceptual framework and then the paradigm of the study. So usually in most formats in universities that I have experience to teach, they start with an introductory paragraph, this defining or describing the each important subtitle of the review of literature. So this chapter presents the following elements: relevant theories, which discuss theories that serve as primary basis. That relevant theories is a part of the review of literature, which discuss theories. That's an example of a description. The review of related literature, which clarifies and defines the variables being studied from different published literature and studies, like thesis and dissertation, which focus on similar and conceptual framework and paradigm of the study. So let us look at how you will conduct the review of literature. This is now the action. How will you do it? So in doing that, first you have to find relevant materials. Relevant means that material is related, has something to do with your topic and with your major variables. So when as I repeat, because this is very important, relevant materials are significant or are related to your studies when they discuss about your topic or one of your major variables. Then after you have find relevant materials, next thing to do is the actual reading. I am always emphasizing that reading is prerequisite to writing. You cannot write unless you read. The more you read, the more you write, the more you can write. So if you have many inputs in your mind, in your schema, you have many rooms in your mind about something about your topic as well as your major variables, then you can write easier. You can write spontaneously because there are inputs, there are reserves in your schema of the brain. So after the actual reading, you can now take notes. The matrix that I have shown you is an example of a device for note taking, because we are using always our laptop, our computer set, or even our cell phone. Very few now at this point in time are using the manual paper in pencil, wherein they use index cards when they go to the library. Very few goes to the literal library. Even they are required by the DepEd as well as by the CHED. But at this point in time in globalization, I suggest and I strongly recommend you use literatures that are found in the internet. Because if you are planning to publish your paper in US, in India, or even in Europe or in Africa, your literatures that you have reviews must be found in the internet. Must be found in the internet. There are hard copies in your libraries. They are there to be read and to be consulted. But if they are already old meaning 3 years, the oldest book must be 3-year-old. So if your books in the library are old as 10 years ago or more than that, they must not be in the thesis or in your paper because they are already obsolete. There are many new literatures that are current that you can find in the internet. So if you are planning to publish in the international publication, be sure that the review of literature that you're going to include are found in the internet. Okay? So in the note-taking, you can use the matrix that I have shown you. While you are reading and do the encoding, there is already a table or a matrix in your wallpaper, and then all you have to do is to click it and add indicators in it. The type of reading is very important for you to be reminded of, so that when you review of literature, you can do it successfully or effectively. So the first one is elementary reading. All of us graduated in the elementary reading, meaning we can read. Many are fast reader, many are slow reader, but when you can read, congratulations, you passed the lowest level of reading. Now, the next question for elementary reading is your comprehension. There are people who comprehend so fast. There are people who can comprehend after 10 times reading. Reading, rereading, rereading, and rereading. Walang problema. It is a matter of exercise. It is a matter of mastering. It will help you. Practice makes perfect. It will increase your comprehension if you keep on reading. Then you graduate from elementary reading. Next is systematic skimming. Of course, we are all doing our own jobs. We have our own personal matters to attend to. So systematic skimming means you are just spotting which literature in the net is related or relevant to your study. And then after you have spotted in the systematic skimming, say looking at the index, looking at the glossary, looking at the title of the book, or if you come across with an article, you read the first paragraph, you read the last paragraph, then you look at the italicized word, the words that are bold, and even the subtitle. And if those are showing one of your major variable or even your topic, it means that that is related. And systematic skimming is used when you are not having a quality time to read at that point in time. Say, for example, you are in the library, or even if you are in the internet, and then you have time to look into literatures, and because there are many people, you could not understand what you are reading. So all you have to do is systematic skimming, and then save it. no, in your hard disk, or you picture it, and then when you go home, then you start reading. That is called systematic scheming. Now, after you have done systematic scheming, you can do analytical reading. So analytical reading means that you are giving quality time to comprehend the literature. You cannot write that in your own words unless you comprehend it, you understand the substance of what you are reading. It is called analytical reading because when you are reading as if you are in front of the author of that article, the author of that book, then you are having a discussion of the substance of what you are reading with the author. That is called analytical reading. Analytical reading is answering the WH who wrote this, where it was written, what are the important variables or indicators that I must include? Why do I have to include this? How will I put this? Something like that. That is called analytical reading. You are having a discourse, or you are having an agreement with the author of what he's telling, or you can also disagree and put something in your logbook about the things that you are coming across with the literature. Analytical reading is understanding thoroughly one literature. Then, next, number 4, you have comparative reading. The comparative reading now is doing meta-analysis. It's good to use meta-analysis rather than analytical reading because it is more reliable. The reliability index is high when there are 3 or more experts telling the same facts or the same results of a study. So you can only do that when you do comparative reading. I have my topic content validity or the major variable. This is called now the result of my analytical reading. In this author, he said content validity is answering the question how adequately the content of the test samples. And it is also described as the domains that are where inferences can be made. We call this as indicators. These are called indicators describing content validity. Content validity, according to this author, is also similar with content in format. Now, according to the author in green, who is that author in green? That is Asaad, Abu Bakar, Hailaya, and Wilhelm. Analyzing their article, that article gives us this indicator. Factors that affect inappropriateness of the item, direction, reading vocabulary, sentence structure, level of difficulty, for constructed items, length, arrangement, patterns, and when you say, what are the factors of content validity or factors of content validity, we can have it as the major variables, and these are called the sub-variables. And in the same, do, meaning this author agrees with Asaad, and only with ambiguity he did not agree. Do, meaning the preceded indicators or sub-variables is agreed by this one. Now, that is called analytical reading. Analytical reading is coming up with the important indicators or with the important sub-variables. Now, comparative reading is this one. There are how many authors on this row? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 authors. In comparative reading, you have to look which of these indicators or sub-variables are similar and which of these are different. Meaning, what is the indicators of the first author? Is it similar to the indicator of the second author, or are they different? You are doing comparative reading. Now, after doing that, you do the synthesis. And this is now the synthesis. Synthesis is a result of meta-analysis. Meta-analysis is a result of analysis. Analysis is done by analytical reading, and meta-analysis is done by comparative reading, which came from is elementary reading and systematic scheming. So that's very important. So you are now, this is called now the paraphrase. This is how you do paraphrasing. With all these indicators and all these sub-variables, you now say it in your own words. And this is now the paraphrase. Content validity measures the content and format of the questionnaire where inferences can be made. This is the in-text citation in red according to Rico Santos Bendicho. Is this reliable? Very reliable and stable because there are authors who claim that. The factors affecting content validity are appropriateness of test items, direction, reading vocabulary, sentence structures, level of difficulty, and patterns of answers. So, who told that? Santos, Asaad, Abubakar, Hailaya, Del Socorro. How many of them? There are 6 of them. So very reliable, high index, so the reliability index, meaning that when you are looking into the sub-variables of content validity, the sub-variables of content validity, according to Santos, Asaad, Abubakar, Hailaya, Del Socorro, are appropriateness of test items, direction, reading vocabulary, sentence structure, level of difficulty, and patterns of answer. And then, but according, there is one factor that is only said by Asaad, Abubakar, and Hailaya. Is this reliable as compared to this one? It is not reliable as compared to Santos Asad because there are 5 of them. Only 3 of them, they are called cohorts. They are partners. So it is not as reliable as of these 3 and as of these 5. These are now the strategies in reading literature. First is pre-reviewing. What type of reading is pre-reviewing? You can do that by systematic scheming. Pre-viewing meaning you just look at one part of the article, or if you come across with a book or with a journal or with an ebook, you just look at the title, previewing, or you just look at the table of contents, look at the glossary. We call that as previewing. And that is called systematic scheming. Then after you have previewing, you proceed now with highlighting. Highlighting when it is yours. So when you have photocopied something, you can do highlighting. Okay? You cannot highlight if it is not yours. Okay. When you have copied as an article in your notes, you can also do highlighting there. So in highlighting, you underline important ideas. You box words, phrases, images that need further analysis. You question mark. You put question mark on confusing passages, unfamiliar references, or words that need to be defined. You encircle relevant words, ideas, or images. You put a line when there are 2 concepts or 2 ideas that are connected. You put numbers when there is a sequence of incidents, sunod-sunod. You put vertical lines to the key portions of the text. Say, for example, there is a sentence or a paragraph that needs to be digested. So you put vertical lines on that. And then you put stars to important ideas like your major variables and sub-variables or important indicators. Then after that, you can do annotating. So annotating, when you put 2 marginal to marginal notes. So meaning, before you can forget it, doing analytical reading, so you have to put your own mind or your own thoughts regarding a certain portion of the literature so that you will not forget that while you are reading. That is called annotating. Annotating is when you agree, say yes. When you disagree, you can put question mark and then you explain why. You put your own comments and understanding about concepts or about paragraphs of certain literature. Then after annotating, you can also, in annotating, you can ask questions, you can react to what you are reading, you can also give your opinion, you can agree or disagree, and you can also locate important passages in it and make connections. Find meaning and relevance with the reading materials. And you can also define new words when you do annotation. Annotating is very important in the review of literature. This will help you to facilitate paraphrasing. Then you can also track themes when you are doing qualitative research. Okay. Now, when you come across with relevant theories, these are the important things that you must include when you include relevant theories. When you put relevant theories, it must be brief because you don't have to copy everything about a certain theory. What you're going to include are the following. Look for the theory. After looking that, look for the author of the theory. Then the theory title, all theories have a title. Say, for example, the scientific theory, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, environmental theory by Nightingale, something like that. Then after the author and then the theory title, there is also the theory statement. The theory statement is the definition of a certain theory. Then that the author, the theory title, the theory statement are just copied from the article or from the book. Then in the explain the theory, the explanation must be coming from you. It is not copied. It must be coming from you. And then you end by relating the theory to your present study. If there is a theory that you're going to include in the review of literature. Okay, this is an example of when you consider a theory that is related to your literature and you want to include that in the review. There are 4 theories on how children learn a language, and these are behaviorism, linguistics, social. This is called the title. Then the author is Bokelich in text citation. Only the theory of social interactionism is adapted in this study. Okay, so that's the title. This is the author. And this one now is the theory statement. Social interactionist theory does not come from either side of the nature or nurture debate. Rather, it acknowledges the influence of genetics and parental teaching. This is called the theory statement. What follows now will be the theory explanation. However, it shares with behaviorists the belief that environment plays a central role in children's language development, so on and so forth. And the last paragraph is called now the theory relationship to your study. This social interactionist theory was conceptualized in English language since English is the Philippine second language. This study assumed that the English performance, so on and so forth. You include now your own study relative to the theory that you collect. Then, with your related literature, it is also called conceptual literature. It purports to clarify the different variables of the study, the sub-variables, and the delimitation of the study objectively. If in some papers, they have the so-called scope and delimitation. Scope means major variables. Delimitation means sub-variables and the indicators. You don't have to put in the scope in the limitation the questionnaire because there is chapter 3 that will discuss that. Conceptual literature comes from the different published materials. Now, when we speak about published materials, there are publications that sponsor the materials now. Mostly are for commercial purposes, but we are looking it for educational reasons. So they do that so that the information or the generated knowledge will be benefiting many people. And we are using meta-analysis for critical evaluations of materials. And there is one question, how many books depends upon the researcher's judgment. There are journals, as I experienced one, I have submitted my paper and they required us to have at least 40 reviewed articles. 40 reviewed articles, but not all journals, not all publications will require you and will have you the number of reviewed literature. Practically, I'm always telling that we cannot prescribe the number of books or the number of articles that you're going to consult and include in your review of literature. It depends upon your knowledge level. If you think that after consulting 10 or 15 literature that you have reviewed, you are already tough, you have already a very good theoretical framework, then you stop. But we cannot compare 15 to 30, meaning the more, the merrier. The more consulted literature, it means that the more knowledge you have and the toughest you can be. The formulation of the review of literature, it depends upon the school or the institution or even the research organizations where you're going to publish your materials. When I published my own in the International Conference on Education, Psychology, and Social Sciences, my 80-page paper was just synthesized into 8 pages. So meaning it depends upon the one who is going to publish your paper, or it depends upon the USC. So your school has your own way of having the formulation of your review of literature, but I suggest per experience and as I do it scientifically, in your review of literature, you start with the title review of literature, or what is it, and then you have the subtitle. Use first your topic as your first subtitle, and then followed by the different major variables that are yours, the limitation of your study or the scope of your study. So your subtitle will be first your topic, and then the major variables follows as the subtitle. Then you include all the indicators relative to the major variables and to your topic. So there is no use of putting local literature and then foreign literature. In globalization, there is no local, there is no foreign. That's already obsolete. Use your variables as your subtitle. So the related studies is also called related literature. And when you come across with international publications, the review of literature usually commonly use indicators coming from journals. So we consider that as related studies commonly, or the research literature. In the same, when you do relevant theories and when you put related studies, you can also use the same formula. Now, you have your conceptual and theoretical framework of your study. So conceptual and theoretical framework. So you can use either or. No, you can use conceptual literature or you can use theoretical literature. Now, what's the difference between the two? Theoretical framework if there is an existing theory or theories that will serve as the foundation of your study. Kaya tinawag siyang theoretical framework because there is an existing theory or there are combinations of theories that you want to include in your paper. So the paradigm of the study is just copied because there is an existing theory. All theories that exist, no, whether it is in learning theory or behavioral theory or environmental theory or management theory, all of them have their own paradigm of the theory. So when you use theoretical framework, you just copy the paradigm, but you change the variables because not all variables that are presented in the original paradigm you will not use them all in your own study. So you just revise, you should subtract, you only use the variables that you are going to study. Conceptual framework, when there is no theory that you will be used in your study. No theory that is available. So there are many theories that you've consulted, but you are going to have the synthesis of them and make your own paradigm. Make your own paradigm. Now, if you are using conceptual theory, there are examples of paradigm that you can use. And when we speak about paradigm of the study, this is called a scientific imagination of the researcher. No, that expressed visibly by drawing or sketches. So it is the only part of the paper or the academic paper that has drawings or sketches. It is considered as the capsule of the entire thesis. An expert in research, they just look one page of the entire 100-page or more thesis and dissertation. All they have to do is to go to one page, and that page is called paradigm or the paradigm of the study. And because they are experts, they can easily interpret, they can easily understand the drawing, because the drawing is the capsule or the heart of the thesis or dissertation. When used in scientific work, the symbols to use must be specific in meaning. So the usual figures used in a paradigm of the study are rectangles, circles, and squares, lines and arrows. But if you're going to use irregular shapes, you have to give an acceptable rationale for them or rationale for them. You have to explain why you're going to include a star, while you're going to use a spiral in your paradigm. A title is needed to summarize the whole paradigm. So these are examples. The commonly used paradigm in a paper, we have the IPO model or the input. The IPO model, this is called, the first box is the input. In this example, you have the profile of entrepreneurs, the various roles played, and the level of performance. The process is analysis of data through questionnaire, informal interviews, in a statistical treatment, and the output is the result, the profile and various roles and level of performance of entrepreneurs measured. So there is a title there, profile and various roles of entrepreneurs towards improved work performance. Don't put paradigm of the study because it is already understood it is a paradigm. So you put your own title. The IPO model is not used in all types of research. It is only used when your statement of the problem are all factors isolating problem. So I don't have time to discuss about the different types of problem because that's not my role. But in the review of literature, you can include the different paradigm of the study, and this one is only used when your problem is a factor isolating problem. What is the profile of entrepreneurs? What are the various roles played? How are they rated? Or what is the level of performance of these entrepreneurs. Those questions are all factor isolating. And when you have factors isolating, you use this one. But if you have experiment, if you're going to do an experiment, you have also the independent variable and the dependent variable. Now, I would like to emphasize the independent variable and the dependent variables are variables only used when you do quantitative experimental. And when you do that, you use the IV-DV model. So the first box is the independent variable, the cost, and the second box is the dependent variable. So you have an arrow because the dependent variable is always affected by the independent variable. So there is a title, you do an experiment. Next, we have the CP model. CP model is used when you do quantitative research, but you will not have, you will not do an experiment. All you have to do is to do a survey, a descriptive study. So we call this the first box as the C, criterion variable, and the P is called the predictor variable. There is a title. When are you going to use that? When you do not do an experiment, but you are going to do a quantitative research. Then another one is called the P model or the program model. If you're going to have a program that will be the output of your research, you have the DASP program, and this is called now an example, faculty development program. And then because you want to create your own paradigm, you have the so-called original model. Your original model, you did not copy to anyone. You made it by yourself, but you have to explain it further. Whether it is quanti or quali, you make your own paradigm of the study. This is used when the researcher is presenting an original paradigm. Share Jesus.
Subscribe and
Subscribe and
share
share
Paraclet
Paraclet TV.
TV.
Go, go, go.